This is ancient history. From beginning of time to 1746, the fall of Rome. Early humans were nomads and gatherers, which meant they moved place to place looking for food, called nomads. All early civilizations settled near rivers. Why? Because fresh water source. The pros, farming, silt, food, animals, and the cons were flooding. 3 characteristics of a civilization: writing, government, social class. Famous civilizations: Phoenicians, the first alphabet; Mesopotamia, first civilization; Indus River Valley, indoor plumbing. Also Egypt, China, Rome, Greece. Early religions were polytheism, many, which means many gods. Most early religions were animal nature focused, such as the Greeks, Mayans, and Aztecs. The first religion was Hinduism, which was reincarnation, social caste system, and karma. Buddhism, they believed in Buddha, Siddhartha. Judaism, Abraham. Christianity, Jesus. Islam, Muhammad. Major accomplishments: Hammurabi was the first set of laws that were wrote by him. Greece, forms of government: monarchy, democracy, aristocracy, oligarchy. Rome developed the Republic, checks and balances, and the Senate. Middle Ages were from 476 to 1450 CE, also known as the Dark Ages because no moving forward. Early Middle Ages, people were living in chaos because a group called barbarians. Battle of Hastings was in 1066 between Edward the Conqueror and William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror won, led to the development of feudalism, where nobles were granted the use of land that legally belonged to the king. This led to struggles for power between kings and nobles. Church was the uniting factor for all people regarding of their social status. Also became a powerful force during this period. King John was taxing the people so much that it led to them revolting and led to the Magna Carta, which was a document that limited the power of the king, gave people the right to a fair trial, and led to the development of Parliament, which was a system of government still in Great Britain today that is made of House of Commons and a House of Nobles, which are the Lords. Important events in the Middle Ages: bubonic plague, which caused population decrease, came from Mongolia. Fleas on rats, fleas on rats. There's a lot of trade and biological warfare. Crusades opened up trade, cultural diffusion, and on the Silk Roads. The 100-Year War was between France and England, and Joan of Arc was a martyr. Major accomplishments: feudalism, Magna Carta, money economy, and absolutism. Now, we're at the modern history. This is a lot of stuff. From 1450 to now. The 15th century to 16th century was the Renaissance, also known as rebirth. Focus on re-emergence of Greece and Rome, the famous civilizations of the past. Famous artists: Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel. Shakespeare, of course. And Machiavelli wrote The Prince. The development of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg is the reason behind the spread of literacy and also issues with religion. Reformation, which means religious reform, spread by the development of the printing press and the writings of Martin Luther and the 95 Theses. The Reformation leads to breaks off of many different forms of Christianity. King Henry VIII and his many wives leads to struggles between Protestants and Catholics. Now we move into absolutism from 1600s to 1700s. Absolutism is rulers that have divine right to rule or rule from God. They have unlimited power and no checks and balances, which are the 3 branches of government, separation of powers. Famous absolute rulers were Ivan the Terrible, Frederick the Great, Philip II, who was from Spain and he used forms of torture. And then we have Louis the 14th, who had the Palace of Versailles. Absolutism will lead to the American, French, and Latin revolutions because of ideas from famous philosophers during a time period called the Enlightenment. From 1400s to 1700s, the idea from exploration and the Crusades led people to want goods from Asia, so people began to explore to find a faster route to Asia. The first explorer was Marco Polo. The 3 G's of exploration are gold, glory, and God. Some technical advances before exploration are cartographers, map makers, compasses, and weapons, which were invented by the Chinese. Columbus discovers a new world, which includes the Bahamas and the Caribbean. The number 1 export in the Columbian Exchange was sugar, and the Columbian Exchange was enormous, widespread between Europe, Asia, and USA. And they traded plants, animals, food, diseases, and ideas. And also, the triangular trade focused only on slaves. Enlightenment. From 1600s to 1700s. The Enlightenment made people begin to question the world around them and hypothesize why things happened in the way that they did. Famous inventors, or scientific thinkers, Denis Diderot wrote the first encyclopedia. Nicholas Copernicus, the sun was center of the universe. Galileo Galilei built telescope, think of astronomy. Isaac Newton, law of motions. Sir Francis Bacon developed scientific method. After the scientific revolution, people used the scientific method to change government. This became known as the Age of Reason, in which people began to question absolutism, the way that government operated. Famous Enlightenment thinkers: John Locke, who believed in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thomas Hobbes believed in absolute rulers, and he thought humans were cruel. Voltaire believes in freedom of speech and religion. Montesquieu, separation of powers, 3 branches of government: judicial, legislative, executive. Rousseau, people naturally good, power corrupts, direct democracy. And Beccaria, fair and speedy trial. We're still under modern history. Now we're going to talk about the revolutions. From 1700 to 1800s, the most successful revolution was the American Revolution. The least successful revolution was the French, because they used lots of forms of execution. It was caused by deficit spending, and the people wanted equality and liberty. The Latin Revolution led to dictators seizing power in that part of the world. Coup d'etat, sudden overthrow of government. Now we're going to talk about the Industrial Revolution. From 1800s to 1900s. The Industrial Revolution occurred because there was a huge population boom that led to people requiring more goods to be produced to sustain their country. The first industry impacted by industrialization was textile industry, because there was an increase in the supply of fibers coming from America. New forms of transportation were railroads, steam engines, and coal. Positives of Industrial Revolution: created jobs, wealthy nations, cheaper clothes, increased immigration, technological progress, and raised the standard of living for people. Negatives were global inequality, which is extreme wealth and poverty. Now we're going to talk about imperialism and nationalism, which was from 1800s to 1900s again. Nationalism is when people should be loyal to their nation, not the king. The first country to unite under nationalism is Greece. Otto von Bismarck used iron and blood to unite Germany. The Industrial Revolution led to an increase in the need for raw materials and resources. Stronger nations then dominate weaker nations to gain these resources. This is called imperialism. Continents that were imperialized by Europe were Japan, Africa, Middle East, India, and China. Impacts of imperialism: colonies, which was where Europeans seize a territory and rule it directly. Protectorate: local government exists, but Europeans make all the decisions. Third, sphere of influence: nations gain exclusive trading rights, but government still makes all the other decisions. Motives of imperialism are religious and social motives for European supremacy, and social Darwinism and racism. Now we're going to talk about World War I, which was between 1914 and 1918. The world was generally at peace between World War I due to the fact that they were that they were imperializing and nationalizing. Militarism glorified military and army prepared for war. Alliances were friends. Imperialism dominate. And nationalism, pride in your nation. And those were the main reasons. I'll show you. Okay. The spark that started the war, a Serbian killed the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in a political move in Bosnia. The alliances in World War I, the Triple Alliances were Austria-Hungary, Germany, Italy. The Triple Entities were Great Britain, France, Russia, and Japan. And Italy, because they switched sides after Germany does an unprovoked attack on neutral Belgium to fulfill the Schlieffen Plan, which was to invade France and Russia. World War I was known as a Great War because so many people died and it was extreme cost. There's a lot of debt, lots of employment worldwide, and economic problems and high taxes. Technology used in World War I would be machine guns, tanks, ships, and bombs. Where did most of the fighting take place, you may wonder? Europe. Treaty of Versailles ends World War I. Who did the Treaty of Versailles punish? Germany. What were the 4 goals of the Treaty of Versailles that punished Germany? The League of Nations, which was the International Peace Organization, territorial losses, demilitarizing Germany, war guilt for Germany. America joins because of the Zimmerman Note, and that the Zimmerman Note is when Germany tells Mexico to invade the U.S. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the Great Depression. Okay, the Great Depression begins in 1929 to 1940. Started in the U.S. because the stock market crashes in 1929. The stock market allows public to buy part ownership of a company. This led to a global impact because the Americans demand repayment of all its loans from Germany. The Great Depression leads to rises of dictators. Famous dictators in this time period are Mussolini, who ruled Italy, Hitler, Germany, Stalin, USSR, Hideki Tojo, Japan. World War II begins due to the Great Depression. World War II begins in 1939 and it ends in 1945. When does Hitler become Chancellor? 1933. The Munich Conference was where Europe tries to appease Hitler to stop another world war. The invasion of Poland begins World War II. World leaders involved in World War II was Sir Winston Churchill of Europe, Hitler of Germany, FDR of the U.S., but he dies, so Truman takes over, and he's the one that drops the atomic bomb on Japan. Famous battles that end World War II, the Battle of Midway, which was in the Pacific, Battle of the Bulge, which was where Allies move in from the west and Soviets move in from the east and attack Germany, and also D-Day, which was the largest land, sea, air operation in history. World War II changes the world by landscapes of Europe, like changing the landscapes, Soviets and U.S. supremacy, or superpowers, and the spread of communism. The U.S. wants to rebuild the weak Germany after World War II, but the U.S. wants to the USSR wants to weaken Germany even further, which leads to the Cold War. The Cold War is from 1945 to 1991. And then we talk about the Korean War in 1950 to 1953. Then we talk about the Berlin Wall. Also, we talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, and Vietnam starts in 1950 when the French invade, but then the U.S. come in the 1960s. And I need to change that. So, 1960s. Then we get into Vietnam in the 1950s for the French and the U.S. in the 1960s. Then we talk about decolonization, which is happening a lot. The main point would be India and Pakistan. They get independence from Europe. Then we talk about terrorism and the debt crisis. That's all of world history basically in 15 minutes.